Ernesmo,
Here.
Riley,
Here.
White,
Here.
Bruce,
Here.
Belcher, and Campbell is now excused as well. And I am here.
All right. Can we get an approval of the minutes from the August 21st meeting?
Motion to approve. I'll second.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion passes. Are there any additions or deletions from the agenda? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on. Want to request to appear. We have Parks and Rec here. Hello. Hello. Is your mic on? No, good. Now it is. Perfect. All right. We are all open ears.
So I didn't necessarily know where on the agenda to put this, but I figured under request to appear, and then they'll kind of be here for the whole meeting as well
Great.
to observe, and then there might be, some, when we get down the list, there might be some items that especially pertain, but I'll let you guys just kind of say why you're here.
Thank you, Scott. Councilmember Bisbee here as the Parks and Rec liaison. I'm sitting with Morgan Sauls, the Park and Rec chair. We have held discussions at our Park and Recreation meeting regarding green space and future park development, and have had conversations with both Scott and Harold in regards to this. What we've been given is pretty much a go-ahead for most of the O zoning that exists in the city, as it's undevelopable as for building structures, and we were told request access to anything there in the future should we wish to designate park space. But we're here to talk about R1, R2, P1, and P2 zoning, and we'd like to work with planning and zoning to identify and designate existing city properties for future use as parks or green spaces. We want to have a specific focus on balance of residential space and park space as we move into the future, as well as securing property adjacent to or in proximity of existing parks. And so the plan is to work with planning and zoning to ensure that we have accessible green and park space for future generations. And what that would entail would be a commitment by planning and zoning to recognize park and recreation space as valuable to our community, and work with us in establishing those properties, specifically earmarked and undevelopable for future use. So we can start there with questions.
Any questions?
Adam, Tim Riley, are you suggesting that there be undeveloped lots in the city that might be residentially zoned currently?
Exactly.
And you would like to have them designated to stay as green space?
Correct, or park space. Yes, rather than receiving.
Are they in private ownership currently?
And at this point, we'd be discussing anything city-owned.
Any other questions? Well, if I may, some examples that we've discussed for what we're kind of looking for would be at the Ely Recreation Center, just behind where the skate park is, over what is considered an alley, there's an open lot that is currently undeveloped. We would be looking to potentially at some point, maybe looking into having that put into a bike kind of park, similar to the skate park, to expand, because it sounds like there's a lot of kids on bikes coming and using the skating ramps. So just adding that additional space as those outdoor recreation activities for kids continue to grow and gain in popularity. Another example would be any workforce housing. If there's any big workforce housing that goes in, looking to see if there would be a section of that designated land that could be put into green space for not only the residents but also for the community at large, for anybody who would be living near there to be able to enjoy the outdoor space. And it also does help with mental health, it helps with physical health to experience these outdoor spaces. So it would be beneficial to not only the people living in those buildings, but as I mentioned, the community at large. Thank you. Any question?
Yeah, you're not talking about like distressed home somebody's living in, you're not trying to get that property, you're just taking bare land and want to convert that into public.
Correct, yeah,
Okay,
and
that's kind of what I was hoping.
to offer a little bit of guidance, what some municipalities do is they set up a promise of land allocation. Usually it's based on population. For every 1,000 people, they promise up, 6 acres of park space designated in various areas throughout their city. And so what we'd like to do is establish some type of rule or a template to abide by so that we can always ensure that we have those spaces as our population grows and the city develops.
Now, certainly a cemetery isn't a recreation spot, but it is a green spot. Is that taken into your?
No, that would fall
Okay.
under the jurisdiction of the cemetery.
Okay, I just wondered if you take that into your, 6 acres per 1,000 people or whatever.
Right.
Yes?
So do you know how much green space do you have already for parks?
We don't, and I think this is kind of the starting point to examine that. What do we have existing, where would we like to be, and is that plan a balance, given what other cities and other townships, et cetera, do in order to ensure there's a healthy balance between residential and park space?
Do you consider any of the land outside that's already green space, like the Bass Lake Trail, the Bushway Trail, other places that are within driving distance of the city?
We operate as a board for the city of Ely. Anything outside the city limits wouldn't qualify for any type of, and I get it, there's a lot of stuff out there, and there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's already so much, how much more do you want to put inside the city?
Well, a lot of it has to do with accessibility.
Yeah.
Children after school having a place to go, they can't hop on their bike and ride to Bass Lake Trail while their parents are at work. We want to be able to ensure that that access to green space for children or people with disabilities that can't drive. We want to make sure that there's accessibility within a appropriate distance. You shouldn't have to get to the other side of town, for example. And that's all, these are all questions that we will need to answer and examine as moving forward, as we begin to develop a plan. At this point, we're opening the door, letting you know that this is what we'd like to pursue.
And we're not looking, like we mentioned earlier, we're not looking to take a zone that it has houses in need of repair and just completely bulldoze down the house and do that. We're not looking for something like that. We're even looking for having maybe even some pollinator parks if there's open space available in some of these areas where if a building were to come in and a business wants to build or a new home wants to be built on there, that there would be a portion of that land that maybe could remain that pollinator park. It doesn't, while we would like to go big with some of these spaces if it is available, we understand that we are willing to work with smaller spaces, even for pollinator parks, rain gardens, that kind of thing, just to try to improve some of these greenery spaces, like Adam said, for accessibility for people who can't get in their car and drive to Kochendorfer Falls or have the mobility to be able to even hike out to the Kochendorfer Falls.
It's always nice for people to visit those areas outside the city, but it's always a good idea to have places in the city for them to visit too.
I have a question for Scott. So it's my understanding that we haven't done a promise of land allocation in the past, not saying that we couldn't, but do we have anything in stuff that, like in methods that we've already used that could help designate some spaces like that?
Like actually designate them as parks? Or?
Well, I guess I'm thinking like maybe like is there like an overlay thing that we can put on something and like maybe would that be an easier way that we could say like, okay, so this isn't a residential area, we're gonna overlay this is like a park zone on top of it. I don't know, is that?
Yeah, so like currently we have a shoreline overlay.
Yeah.
So we have one of the previous planning and zoning districts back in like 2010, we have a map of the trail overlay, because RTO or trail overlay district is actually in our ordinance. And there's actually rules and regulations, even to the point trail, they can have special permits and things like that. So we do have the recreational trail overlay district. We don't necessarily have like a park overlay district or something, so we kind of have a portion of it, but
Yeah, I guess I'm just like thinking out loud, like, so I know that we've had like, as a commission, we've been thinking about like not spot zoning, so do you think that like it'd be best to like rezone something in there as like open space, or do you think it's best to just keep it as residential, but then there's nothing really there to protect it unless we did like a plan out, right? Like, I guess I'm wondering what tools are at our disposal.
yeah, I think that, like I was explaining to Councilmember Bisbee before the meeting, you know, I think one of the big strides was when we updated our permissible uses list here just a couple months ago. And residential and public spaces allow parks, so in a residential zone, you can have a park. So just because it's a residential zone space, R1 and R2 space, you can still put a park. Same with P1, P2, you can put multi-family dwellings on those spaces, right? So we kind of expanded that to kind of encompass that. So we shouldn't have to, every time we get a proposal for something, have to be like, oh, we have to rezone.
We don't have to repose it, but then,
Right.
I guess I'm wondering like how you protect it into the future, but there's not really a good way except for like this land allocation.
Right, the biggest benefit is if it's city-owned, because the city can dictate what's built on that, right? Obviously, a private endeavor, we can't be like, well,
Right.
that has to stay as a park space. I don't think we're looking necessarily at private endeavors and things like that. It's publicly owned land, the city owns, it's already in these districts, right? So I think that puts the ball in our court as far as we can do what the zoning allows us to do, and if there is a need to do that, and the public want for those spaces, it's easier for us to, because we own the space and it's allowed,
Yeah.
you know.
So I guess what I'm thinking of is that potentially like our best tool for us to get some of this, we would just like put it in a comprehensive plan that we want more park space in town, right? Like we've already built it into like, that means like trying not to go backwards on what we've already done within our permissible uses list, right? So it is allowed now, so that's good. But then we just make sure that we try to keep those city lands the way it is. So then when we go to like vote on like, should we sell this piece of land, we know we shouldn't sell that.
Right.
So as long as we put it in our comprehensive plan, probably that's the best way to go about it.
I think that's the key, and I think even there's some discussion at the park and rec meeting the other night, there's some ideas of, can we bring more gardens and things like that, and the question always comes, well, who's gonna maintain everything, right? Because the city can't provide the services to maintain every single garden or every single flower bed and things like that, but if you're looking at taking a property that's vacant and you're gonna build something there, can you incorporate that, or a natural watershed, you know, something that naturally holds water, and put plants that are conducive to that. You know, when we're doing new developments, can we just look at incorporating those things?
Yeah.
I think that's probably the more feasibility of it versus like, well, yeah, we're gonna go around and make these 20 sites pollinator gardens or whatever gardens, well, now people have to upkeep this, right? But incorporate it in, I think the big thing is incorporate it into our new developments and thinking of that when we're doing a development versus just, we're gonna flag land, put it in a parking lot, and there's cut grass.
Yeah, and I think we've already made strides on that. Like I think about like the new lot that we have just like been working on as a city. There was like a portion of that was like for our garden space. Does anyone else have any other questions? Sorry, I just took a lot of time.
No, it's great.
Yes.
Scott, if, hypothetically, so we have a lot that wants to be built on, and we decided with the respective buyer of the lot that we would make a green space on that property. Would the purchaser be looking at something from the city then to offset that? Or, you know, granted, they still own the property, but because it's not usable to them, that's something we have to kind of consider here too.
Like an incentive almost?
That's our
Like an incentive?
Yeah, incentive, yeah.
Offer incentives. Yeah, I mean, that's something that we could definitely bring up, and we don't currently necessarily have.
No, I don't have it right now, but I was thinking, well, maybe that's a way to get something like that started, is to offer an incentive to a new purchaser, who buyer of a property.
You know, and right now, the only thing that we have as as far as our regulations that require people to have a certain impervious lot coverage, right? So in R1, you can only have, 35% impervious lot coverage. So we do have some of those restrictions. It goes up drastically in different zones, commercial, things like that. It's the percentage much less, but, we already do kind of have those in there. You have to have X amount of impervious surfaces, right? But rather than just saying, again, grass or something, if you plant X, Y, and Z, we'll give you this siphon or something. However, like I said, any sort of incentive, I think that's definitely something that's feasible. What that is, I don't know.
Okay. Yes?
Yeah, and for instance, with the Spalding lots, down in Spalding that have been subdivided and sold off, in future developments of land such as that space be allocated for park area, again, some sort of template to follow, say, oh, we have 20 lots, so we need, for every 10 we need a quarter acre of park or green space. Some sort of commitment to maintaining a balance, again, through residential and green park space. Some sort of scale that we can commit to in order to maintain a balance of space. And that's part of the equation.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a lot of groundwork that has to be done to progress on this,
And it is something, as Emily brought up, the comp plan, it is something that is currently that's going to be worked into the Park and Rec comp plan, is moving forward to work out some of these details, like do we want to look into a possible incentive for new home buyers if they buy the property that was allotted for this park or recreation. So it is something that Park and Rec is interested in continuing with and wanting to continue to work with planning and zoning to ensure that we can move forward together to ensure that these green spaces happen and we don't get, massive skyscrapers lining the entire 2 miles of town.
Great.
Does, yeah,
I still got more question. Sorry.
that's,
So what's your ratio? What do you have in mind for, okay, so we have a prospective site that has maybe 5 lots in it. Okay, so those 5 buildable lots, of that, how much green space would you have in that area?
Well, it would depend upon the size of the lots, for one. And that's something that we have to examine. Again, we're opening the door to this to see, what, this is a presentation of, I don't have that right now. I know it varies by city and town. I want to say I heard it was 1 acre for, I don't have these numbers, 4 acres perhaps for every 1,000 citizens. But it's different wherever you go. And it would be up to us to work that out with you guys, when you feel, what's the ratio? What's the good ratio for Ely? Knowing that a lot of our economy is tourism in the recreational category, and if people are visiting Ely for recreation, we want to be able to show that we are a city interested in parks and recreation. We want you to be on a stroll down the streets. There's another park. These guys have parks that there's lots of space. They really bring the outdoors even into their city limits, and we don't want that to go away. We don't want just housing everywhere you look. We want to have a good balance of green space that you can breathe freely in. So, what is that balance? I don't know. We need to sit down and discuss that, and we're here to say that's what we want. Can we move forward in these talks and start? Can we get numbers from Scott? What's the existing park space? What's the existing residential or industrial space? Is it a good balance? Does it feel like a good balance? Because right now, I know a lot happens at Whiteside, and I love taking my children to Seamers, and we do have a little pocket park, but I feel like there could be more on the east side of town, perhaps a small park, nothing big, maybe the size of this room, you know, with a couple of swings and a slide and a couple of benches and a couple of nice trees. Just another place within walking distance for folks, you know, beyond 13th Ave East. You know, things of that nature, examining, kind of just taking a critical look at what we have and what we expect of ourselves.
Does everyone on this commission feel that it'd be okay for Parks and Rec to reach out to Scott and do some more research on this?
We definitely need more research. Yeah, it's answers that question. Like, example, what do we have right now? How many, we have 3 parks in the city limits. How many acres are those in relation to the population right now? So that all has to be looked at and taken into account.
And that's gonna take work, and you know, we want to make sure that works okay.
I think it works fine. It seems like what I've heard from the commission here is it's okay to continue on this research path.
Well, that's the reason we live up here.
Yeah.
Common sense.
Awesome.
So, do we need any sort of directive for Scott in regards to working with Parks and Rec as far as that? I think it all falls into the guys.
It's in my job description.
Yeah, it's in his job description.
Yeah.
Bug them as much as you want.
I don't think you want to tell us that.
Well, we do appreciate you guys listening to us and our aspirations as we move into the future in regards to sustainability and green space and our common plan for Parks and Rec. So we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your time.
Yeah, one more.
Are you looking for a representative from this board to sit in on your meetings? I mean, you know, kind of like Angela sits on ours, or you're, you know, Alan, you're sitting in the Parks and Recs. Would you find any benefit to having somebody from zoning there?
So, we do currently have, Scott is coming to our meetings as well to kind of be that communication. I mean, you are more than welcome to come to our, meetings if you would like to send a representative, just so that way then we can all be on the same page. But we've got the man who knows it all on both committees.
I was going to say, you know more.
Depending on how it moves forward, maybe at some point a joint meeting might be needed, just as this continues and once we get that research. But once we get to that point, we have that research, we have it all in writing so that we can present it nicely to all of you to open up that conversation. We would be back to ask for that.
When are your meetings?
Our meetings are every third Monday at 5 o'clock. And they are either here at City Hall or over the summer. This last summer we did expand to have some of our meetings at some of our park and recreation facilities. So back in May, we were at Whiteside, and then this last meeting, just this past Monday, was at the Ely Rec Center.
So just to quick follow-up, even though we already thanked you and everything, we're going to keep talking. So it sounds to me just as I look forward to how this is going to function, is we'll be working with Scott, and then we will request a designation on space if we feel that it would be within our interest to retain that space, at which point Scott would bring that to planning and zoning as a formal request of Parks and Rec, and then you would either approve or not approve the designation of that land. And if you approve it, it would then go to council for final approval. That looks like it would, that's the flow chart that I envision.
Except we don't have a designation thing right now, right? We don't have a way to designate stuff as parks and rec land, do we?
We could draft something. I could draft something. I could draft something and bring it to the commission, and we can tweak it and do whatever as far as if the commission wants to come up with a proclamation of some sort, or whatever we want to call it, the verbiage we want to use, is if we're going to designate certain pieces of land as kind of like predetermined, this is where this, these type of things can be utilized.
Tim?
Are you still talking about how it's just public land.
Yeah.
Open space in P1, P2. You mentioned R1, R2 when we first started talking about, they were confused about that.
Well, I believe the city does own property in R1, R2 areas.
So if there's a residential lot that was non-buildable, I'd be interested in.
Or even if it was buildable, for instance, Scott, there's a few parcels that the city owns between homes. That we could say, well, there's nothing in this, within, a certain radius of this lot, we feel that it should be converted, designated as park and rec space for future conversion into a pocket park for these area residents. At which point that request would go to Scott, he would bring it to planning and zoning. You guys would look at that lot and say, you know what, I think it would be nice to have that there. Let's secure this for Parks and Rec, and it will be for them to determine its future, not for us to just sell off and have another house.
Is it a city council role to do that, though, to preserve any designation on a lot that the city owns? I mean, Parks and Rec could go to the city council and say, we like that lot. Why is planning and zoning involved?
I feel that it would get sent to planning and zoning. I don't know for certain.
We also just want to make sure that we're coming to planning and zoning in the case of, that if it did go to council and they sent it back to you guys weren't looking at it as that, we went to the principal instead of going to the teacher kind of a thing. So we just want to make sure that we're working collaboratively with you guys for the chance that if it does come to you, it doesn't seem like we're trying to overstep what Park and Rec is for and try to do something that would fall under the jurisdiction of planning and zoning. We want to make sure that we're having this open communication to ensure that everybody is aware of what's going on and it's not seeming like that we're trying to do something without your permission.
So if a park is presented, would there be public input, like a public hearing? Like it was between two houses?
Yeah, the way I would say in the last year, you look at, I don't necessarily know if it'd be a hearing per se, but public input, seeking public input. Just you look at even the matters like the parking lot that the city put down there, that was sent out for public input. So I think involving, again, I don't know to what extent as far as an official hearing or what, but definitely sending notices out to members in the community, posting public notices in the paper and things like that, hey, this is a proposal that we're looking at doing with this piece of property. We want your feedback. Even just recently, right on Savoy Road, there was questions on a private, turning a piece of property to a private drive, and that just, there was letters sent to the four people in the neighborhood that would have affected. So just making sure that we're involving the people that live in the neighborhood and the general public on these decisions, I think is, like I said, whether or not the format will be like a true public hearing, but getting those feedback and letting people speak of what they're feeling. I think that's the big takeaway.
So what I'm hearing is, there's a few parts of this whole thing. So one, in our part of the comp plan, we can work with Parks and Rec to figure out exactly what should be in the comp plan related to some of this Park and Rec space. Scott has some research to do to help us all out in drafting up what kind of designation or how we can do that and what other cities do to designate this land. And then Parks and Rec is going to work on figuring out what lands and other, like how much of it we think we should have, and then we can come and give our input on that.
Just a final thought, maybe not final, but projects might have some issues or concerns. There are a lot of areas that are designated to be used for housing. And I don't, especially if there's been some infrastructure put in, sewer, water, those kinds of things. I don't know if that's, how big a deal the need for more housing will affect what land would be available, what your balance is going to be. The city just seems to be kind of running out of space. As far as I can see, when people come around, they want to build a home, they can't find a lot. So, something to keep in mind is, you've got to be looking at the development plan from that affects things even like taxes, so. Just my thought.
Thank you. Anyone else have any final thoughts, Tim?
Not, I think you could consider focusing Scott's attention on, are there any non-buildable R1 lots in East Ely that we can focus on? If that's what your primary goal is to find more lots.
Yeah, our intention is not to take, land that could provide housing, obviously. But we also want that to be a barrier. When we say, well, you could always put housing there, you're taking away our housing. There's land for housing. We don't wanna take away a lot that's intended per se. I like your angle on this. Perhaps it doesn't meet, setback requirements and all that, and it can't be developed, and it's in R1. Perfect example, we want that. We want that. So we're already starting to talk about what we want, and that's in here, yep, we sniffed it out. That's our goal, and we want those lots.
I can think of one right now that's on the county sale. That was torn out because of the house. I think it's only like a 30-foot wide lot. It's in the downtown area. I can't think of the exact address right now, but none of the neighbors have ever expressed interest. It would be perfect if the neighbors were like, yeah, I'll buy it, and then they consolidate their lots, but nobody wants to do it. In order to build there, you have to get a variance. They have to be very stringent building codes, because for fire codes, you can't have windows within 10 feet of structure, things. It could be a very odd looking house, right? So like that property in my mind, like, yeah, for sure. And it's right, and there's nothing else around it where it's a pocket park. That term is pretty easy, I think, to just pocket park. Oh, it's a small little piece of land. You can just
Put a bench, a couple
Put a bench.
of free library,
Yeah.
a couple of trees, and
maybe even, change it up. There's a basketball court at this one. There's a tennis court or whatever you want. Right.
yeah, you're picking up on what we're putting down.
I got you.
Awesome. All right, any other thoughts to add? All right. I think we'll move on from the requests to appear from Parks and Rec. Are there any other requests to appear out there? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on to reports. Scott, you want to give us your planning and zoning administrator report?
Certainly. Grab my notes. And just so Adam and Morgan, you guys are certainly welcome to stick around, and if there's anything else that comes up.
I can stay for a little.
Okay. Yeah, whatever fits your schedule. Okay, so short-term, long-term rental, or short-term rentals, again, same thing, 25 residential, 3 on the wait list. I did have the list printed off, I can pass it around. I know there was some questions about who owns these, who is owning these rentals, and the majority of the people that own them are actually local. I think I only see one from out of state. There's a couple obviously out of Ely, but for the most part it's within the state, and I'll pass that along if anyone wants to take a look at it. But again, we've had people inquiring, some realtors inquiring about short-term rentals, and that's what we're capped at is 25, and I think I was talking to them about explaining that they can do long-term. The biggest, my client wants to move up here, but they can't live here yet, and so they want to do short-term. So that's the biggest question people get is what the short-term rentals. So they want to still use, they still want to come up 4 or 5 times a year, so they still want to use the space, but they still don't want to do long-term. So, but I think it is a good idea to keep it at the 25. It keeps, I'd rather see something be long-term, so we're talking about housing shortages and things like that, and short-term, and so that's going to help us with that. So yeah, I'll get passed around. If you have any questions, let me know. I did meet with the Ely Climate Group here last week, I think. And this is just a kind of, again, a part of collaboration between other entities within the city functioning groups, right? So we, as a city, have multiple committees and things like that. But there's actually a wide array of community groups out there that are doing other great things, right? And there's more than people probably even know. I mean, I can just think of the nonprofit sports groups that there are, and there's a bunch of those, so I can't even imagine all the other groups. And even talking to this group, they're like, yeah, we found out there was this other group, and there's this other group. So we also talked about like, it'd be great to have this like magic board of like, what all groups are there in town?
I have that
Really
list.
Do you have that list?
The groups group.
The groups, yes.
Keep track of
Because there was
I have that
a couple
list.
gals years ago, I guess, that used to keep up on that, and but you do have, okay. And because that's the thing, is like there might be multiple groups that are kind of have the same initiative or, you know, things like that, that they're like counterintuiting everything. So, the big thing we were talking about being, you know, we're a GreenStep city. It was kind of like we've been stuck at this. Is everybody familiar with the GreenStep program?
No, could you explain it quickly? Very.
So in order to be like a green city, the program is run through the MPCA. There's representatives through that. There's different, I think there's a total of 5 steps that you can reach. And to achieve a step, you have to, each step is like, there's a goal that you have to do X, Y, and Z. Right? So we joined in 2014. We currently sit at step 2, which we've been at since 2016. I think what kind of happened is there just never was anybody that was like designated as a GreenStep representative person. And so we very well might be at the 3rd step, but we just haven't submitted the proper documentation that, you know, we did X, Y, and Z. So I actually have a meeting with the state MPCA tomorrow to discuss more of this. What is GreenStep? Because to me, like, I have the general idea of this is what it is, and it's, you know, kind of like Going Green Initiative and things to do right. But what is it? What does that exactly mean? And you can go online and there's a list of cities, and a lot of cities are at like step 1 or step 2. Step 3 is achievable. Step 4 and 5, even there's a lot more that you have to do. And not that it's not obtainable, there's just a lot more you have to do. And there's some different things like public transportation that, you know, we can't really necessarily offer here. And some different things like that. So I will get a better idea, and I will report back on a better definition of what the GreenStep program is all about after I meet with them tomorrow. But I think I'm going to continue these probably monthly meetings with the Ely Climate Group, and as I said, I will meet back with them after I meet the GreenStep Group to have a better idea. And again, it's just some collaboration of things that the city can do, and even when we're looking at projects and things like that, how, you know, again, maybe having, you know, an incentive to have the pollinator garbage or something on a property when somebody proposes a project, things like that. So I will update more on that after my meeting this week. I think I told most of it already. We will have a conditional use hearing on October 16th, so that'll be a little 5 o'clock meeting again then. So please just make sure you can make that form. If you can't, so let me know ASAP. On Tim's request, I did send out letters to all the businesses that I could find that had sandwich boards.
So it has an immediate impact.
It was, I didn't receive any feedback from the letters. So I was like, oh, most people got them, but then I was driving around like yesterday or something, I was like, I feel like there's a good 4-foot gap between us. So the letter that was sent, I don't think I included it, but the letter that was sent out was very, hey, this is just a friendly reminder to be ADA compliant, you have to make sure the sandwich board, wasn't like, this is your first warning for this. Again, it was an educational purpose. Some businesses that are on that list are fairly new, things like that, but I think just it's more of, hey, we have to make sure we keep the sidewalk clean. So far it looks like it's been working well. I'm sure I probably missed a business or two, but I did the best I could as a driver. Yeah, and then the next thing, which I actually presented slightly at Park and Rec, I will just show a quick video on this. This kind of goes back into our parks, open space type discussion we just had.
We're changing the way America thinks about fitness. From college campuses to city parks and trails, we're bringing free fitness everywhere, and we're just getting started. Hi, I'm Mitch Benadji, founder of the National Fitness. The National Fitness Campaign was founded in 1979 the fitness court is the world's best outdoor gym. Our 7-movement, 7-minute system allows you to use your own body weight to get the perfect workout. Easy or hard, it will work for you. Our goal is to build healthy communities by making outdoor fitness an essential part of people's lives, so that each day is better than the last. Now more than ever before, it is vital that we move fitness outdoors to remain safe, healthy, and strong.
Michiganders, as soon as we can, we go outside, which is one of the reasons why the fitness court was such an attraction to us. What impressed us most was their basic philosophy that they want to provide world-class fitness for free. Truly, anyone can use it, no matter what your age is, no matter what your physical fitness level is, no matter what your skills are. It is very adaptable.
Thousands of certified ambassadors will be trained to deliver classes, challenges, and clinics as part of our national fitness campaign. New programs are bringing students outdoors across America. The Fitness Court mobile app is your gateway to enroll in these programs. Simply scan the new digital wall with your phone to access a library of free workouts designed to optimize your experience on the fitness court. Learn the moves and take challenges as we dig deep to create impact for our partners across America. This year, we are thrilled to introduce Fitness Court Public Art. Cities have the opportunity to select a local artist to design their fitness court using the power of the arts and fitness outdoors in iconic public spaces. We're proud to have helped cities of all sizes raise millions of dollars from respected sponsors to support free fitness. Wherever fitness is a priority, you can find a fitness court. We're partnering with large cities using urban movement data to map the best locations for healthy infrastructure. We're bringing fitness courts to within 10 minutes of population centers everywhere.
They provide these wraparound services that, from a city's perspective, that's what you want in a partner like this. You want it to come presented to you on a silver platter with a bow tie around it. They're one of the best partners, I think, that I personally have ever worked with.
We serve almost 1.2 million members across Michigan, and this partnership really is an opportunity for us to bring scalable, free health and wellness opportunities to our community. So I would actually invite cities and organizations, big and small, to explore the opportunity to invest in fitness courts. To be very honest with you, the feedback from different municipalities and different communities has been very positive.
We're committed to raise $150 million to bring the campaign to 1,000 cities and schools, building the largest fitness movement in the world. Join us. Let's make world-class fitness free.
A little bit better than I can explain, but it's still explained a little bit. So outdoor, health and wellness is what they promote, and the big thing is it's all ADA compliant stuff, so it's all flat to the ground. They currently have grants, roughly $50,000 when I talked to the representative of this event. Like in Minnesota, that's pretty much the only grant that you can get. It's a possibility for IAAA money, funded through Blue Cross. Minnesota, they're a partnership with the program, so I know there'd be additional funding with that. The total cost of the projects range from $150,000 to $225,000. So obviously we have to get funding somewhere else because that's just the program. They have to be 150 feet from a playground, 500 feet from an elementary school. The big thing with that is obviously it looks like a jungle gym, right? So they want to avoid anybody that's under 14 going on there. The liability, they said, is the same as like a playground. So it's the same type of liability, no different from that. And yeah, so like I have a meeting with her again in a couple of weeks. They do like this healthy site score. So they, like, in my mind, I have a couple spots, right? Like, oh, this would probably be like good for this area. But then they like do this whole analysis of like, what would this best fit?
I noticed on the map, all the sites were way below Minnesota. Is the climate going to make a huge difference on something like
So yeah, so that was like one of my first questions, right? It was like, so it gets really cold here. So Michigan was one of them, but she said, yeah, all of the materials, all outdoor, to the outdoors, things like that. Obviously, the accessibility in the winter maybe would be less, shovel it off or something like that. And then the other thing was the art piece of it, because we're obviously a very art-driven community, right? How many galleries we have, all the events that we have, so like, to me, really, obviously, White Side Park is what popped up in my mind, because it's a centralized location, there's always people there, and then you've got Garden Fest and all that type of stuff, right? And, yeah, I don't, just, we were approached by this organization, and so I was doing some investigation on it. And I don't know if it directly did to planning and zoning, but
That seems like a part of my thing.
I figured I would at least present it to the group as well, because we might, a location thing as well. It is a plan. Yeah. Any other questions? Keep everybody updated if there's any changes with that. And then the last update is from the tiny home meeting. So as you recall, I had a meeting with the proposal of the tiny home folks. Brought with some of your questions that everybody had, concerns and things like that. So just some of the base highlights from that meeting. The tiny homes are built with a 2x4 construction and 16 inches on center, so they're up to building rules. They're usable in the winter. They wanted to make it look like a home and not a mobile home park. So the way they serve things and things like that, they want them to blend in more. The way they would operate it would be a 1-year lease. I think I said this before, no subleasing would be allowed. They've got a specific manufacturer that manufactures tiny homes from Canada, called Fritz Tiny Homes, and they're specifically made for the winter. They were thinking roughly 15 to 20 units in the beginning. Again, they're certified units, so they come, like the RV Association, whatever is the one association that licenses these and everything. So they come certified, they have permanent hookups. Again, so they have to, insulate and things like that. We talked about heat tape and things like that for the winter months. There's good use multi-parcels of land. And then the way it's marketed is, if you were to do a subdevelopment for housing, everybody would have their own fire pit, everybody would have this and that. This is more of a community-based approach. So it'd be like one communal fire pit, and then they'd have shared garden space,
Designated parking space.
designated parking space, designated space for that. There might be an internal playground that they have. All that type of, one lawnmower, so then not every person has to buy a lawnmower, things like that, right? Communal type space. Their best timeline that they were looking would be possibly next summer sometime.
To start or to be open?
I think to start. So the biggest thing right now is they're working on funding. So, and now with the change of IRRB grants, most of those have to relate to public infrastructure. So there's a way, like Doug was explaining, because there have to be a fire lane, there's a possibility that it would be a private road, but if it's a fire lane, possibly some of the utility hookup funding, because the problem is the utility hookups, if you have to run extra utilities outside the property line, it's not a problem. The funding for that, it's once you hit the property line, then the property owner is responsible for all that. So that's kind of changed over the last year with how IRRB does their grants. And the other thing that they would do is for applicants, they have a point system, so they have to meet so many points before they be allowed into this community base. And that's how they currently run an apartment complex in Duluth, and that's how they screen their applicants, is through a point system. So it would just be like any type thing. Kind of the two that we kind of gave them as homework is we wanted, they didn't come with a conceptual drawing. We kind of, I think that it came with a little bit more of that. But we obviously want to see that before we proceed much much further with anything else. We're looking at what are they expecting from us? If there's going to be a variance for building size requirements and things like that. Whether it's planning and development, really can probably go anywhere. It's could be more just the size. They're just big tiny homes, and they're going to be under 500 square feet, so they're just have to be a variance for minimum size requirement for building. Yeah, I will keep everybody updated on that as well. Hopefully that moves on. We're talking about housing and affordable housing. I think it's a great idea, and these people feel very strongly about it. So.
Anyone have any questions on anything Scott's done on the council first?
Who actually owns the individual units? Does the tenant own the unit, or does this developer own the unit?
So the actual tiny home, so that the people would have to purchase the tiny home.
So this person would set up this infrastructure, the streets and the lots, and then
Yep.
you would buy them and bring them onto there and pay rent to this person?
Yeah, you can. Yep, so the developer would own the land and then you would lease the space.
So did they give you some idea if it was truly affordable for someone? Like what a price would be to buy it and how much per month for rent?
They didn't give us prices on that as far as what they would charge. And the tiny homes vary.
We want to dilute that in this district. I was curious if it's more about the same.
Right, yeah, and, I think that's their goal, is to make it affordable, because, why, if you have a $300,000 tiny home, and then they gotta pay rent, it's not good, that kind of feeds the purpose. And, the prices on them vary depending on what people want to do, and the more things they want to do, put in them, the more cost, because obviously then they're maximizing the space the best that they can, so the more add-ons, the more expensive that they get.
So somebody who had a tiny home on that property who later decided I want to live in this area and where I can move my house over to Camp Street, you couldn't put it on a regular city lot because of the size.
Yeah, variance. Which we've done with trailer houses.
It'd be nice to get the housing.
Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone up here? Adam, you have a question?
It's more of a statement. Tiny, using the terminology tiny home or tiny houses, people have a preconceived notion of what those are, and it's not always a positive one. So some folks have suggested using such wording as studio housing. Just that it introduces a new concept and idea rather than, what we picture as a tiny house. It's drawn some negative feedback in a lot of communities, so just been focusing on how well it's received by the public. There are other ways to express the same type of housing in a different way.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have anything? All right. Scott, you're done with your update?
I am done.
Perfect. All right, projects committee. So I missed projects committee this last time, but I got a report from Harold, and next year's road project has been designated as Harvey Street, so they're going to work on that. And then there are a bunch of ATV projects that have been moved towards funding status. That's really all we have to report. Nothing P&Z related from projects. Any questions? All right. And then Councilor Campbell is not here tonight. I'm going to open the packet. If anyone has any questions, I would ask her at the next meeting. All right, new business. Secondhand good license ordinance. Scott, do you want to introduce that one?
Getting to the good stuff now. Some of these have been a work in progress for a while, some of these have just kind of come to fruition. I think we maybe talked about this a little bit. All right, so in your packet on the screen is our current secondhand good license. Anything that's in red or struck out in red is either what needs to be deleted and or replaced with. So, let's see. So some issues that we've had over the past few years with the secondhand good license is what people are selling, right? go to enforce maybe a blight or something on these properties, and our secondhand good license specifically says you can sell junk, that kind of ties the hands of trying to enforce a blight, right? And junk and salvage type material when it's not in a designated zone for junk and salvage material. So my suggestion was, and this went through a couple hands before I brought it here, so it wasn't just me that came up with this, was replace the word junk with secondhand goods. And so it would be, secondhand goods dealer would be a means of person engaging in a business or buying or selling of both secondhand goods of any kind, accepting goods and merchandise defined as secondhand goods, or used goods instead of metal, under the city code, and then used, and they struck out, wrecked, or dismantled motor vehicles, and just put motor vehicles. And then we struck out, or motor vehicles intended to be wrecked or dismantled. And we just kept the, and goods and merchandise taken as part of full payment for new goods and merchandise. And then I added the, as defined in chapter 11.01, sub 13, quote, junk or salvage yards are not allowed under this chapter as a secondhand good license. Any questions?
So would this apply to all thrift stores and stuff too?
Correct. Anybody that has a secondhand good license.
Does this include pawn shops?
So pawn shops is a completely separate designation in our ordinance. So
We didn't even have a zone for pawn shops.
let me look at this. I don't.
I can see it.
Let me see if we actually have a pawn shop designation.
I'd love
I
to.
feel like we don't. So no.
So I was just curious on that, if the secondhand store would be considered.
No, they're separate, but very similar. The only thing I guess different that a pawn shop would do is a lot of times they set up like a contract of like payment installments and things like that too. You know, like they'll set up and like a lot of jewelry and do like money fronting and things like that. So like I think that's kind of the big designation. Whereas the secondhand goods, you know, a lot of times the secondhand goods license you're either donating or giving that at a very low cost. Where the pawn shop you're trying to get like a better value for it.
Or they hold it and then you can come back and buy it. It's almost
Right,
like
yes, I need $100, okay, well, bring me this chainsaw, okay, well, we're all out of chainsaw, but you can come back and then give me the, and then we get it. That's more of a prompt on over. But we do have the licensing in our ordinance, it's a completely separate license than this.
But we don't have a zone.
We would have a-
Any other questions? There was also one added on page 19 of our packet, the sub 10 conditions to be set. In there, I just want to make sure everyone saw that.
Yeah, I just wanted to see that question about that one first, and then, so everything else stays the same, and then at the very last, I added a sub 10 section. Put it up on the screen here as well. So this, again, kind of goes back to some issues that we've had in years past with some of these places, that maybe aren't keeping them up to, ordinance and things like that. So, subject conditions we set, the city council shall have authority to place conditions on the secondhand good license upon approval if they shall feel necessary to protect the public health and safety. If the conditions of the license are violated, the secondhand good license shall be revoked at the discretion of the council, and a hearing will be scheduled per chapter 6.03 sub 5. So 603 goes into the whole nuts and bolts of license revocations and things like that. So as a broad, so not just related to secondhand license, but any licenses that are under chapter 6, which are most of the city licenses. Gives the council authority to revoke the license if they violate either conditions or a part of the license itself. I know chapter 6 doesn't fall under P and Z, but the licensing and stuff that we've been dealing with has, and it's in our purview to bring forth any ordinance changes to council that we feel is necessary.
Perfect. Tim, you had a question?
What is a consignment shop? Is that covered under this? Where you just put your product in their store and they offer it for sale to you and then you get money back. This person had to water from something that needs to do.
Yeah, I don't,
Just curious if that would be covered.
Isn't that usually second hand good?
I mean,
So it says that if the person who's selling it takes title to it and then they buy it and then resell it, but if you're just selling it to somebody and you're getting a commission for that transaction, consignment shop is different. than this.
yeah, this specifically says under the definition that it's, has been previously owned by a party other than the secondhand goods dealer and subsequently acquired by the secondhand goods dealer. Excludes goods acquired by said secondhand dealer from any party who sells or trades said secondhand goods in the normal course of business. Can I answer the question a little bit?
So in the case of the lot down here where Jay Greeley is, he was a consignment dealer for Bob shop. Bob would pay him for some stuff. But Jay Greeley never took title to it or sold. He never bought it from Bob. He just sold it and then got paid something for it.
So, well, a couple, could have either been last year, so the clearance office currently handles all the licensing, which may fall under my purview here at some point. Because it's a separate parcel and whatnot, Bob was sent a letter saying that he needed to get a license. I think when Jay's license comes up for renewal in October, I think we will address that again and say, if you want to sell stuff on your parcel, you also have to get a second license. Or somehow include
Well, we could
that lot in there.
include in like the first line of sub one here, business of buying, selling, and you can like, or consigning, or maybe consignee, just like add the word consignee on there. Consignor.
You're talking about under sub one?
That first line, so it says like, means of engaging in the business of buying, selling, consigning, or both of second goods. Or all, both probably is the word then. Adam?
I don't know if we want to add consignment to this. I mean, I can pull up chapter 6 real quick and see if there's anything about consignment in there if you want to look.
Including these two, I was just curious if that
Sure.
would be covered by this.
Would that not also apply to the art shops? And so.
Well, that's not secondhand,
That's considered secondhand art,
it's not secondhand art,
but it's consignment.
but then it's not under the secondhand goods dealers, you know?
Oh, this is consignment and it's falling under the secondhand
Yeah.
goods.
Yeah. This is just specifically secondhand goods, asking if consignment will fall under here.
Yeah, if they're new goods, it wouldn't be under here, because you wouldn't be looking under this in general. Because, I mean, if you took out secondhand and maybe buying and selling or anything, everyone would need it.
Yeah.
So what's everyone think? Do we want Scott to research more on consignment in there? Yeah, antique stores and consignment, what you're saying?
Yeah.
So art galleries and antique stores.
It probably could be good to add that in there. So if you want to research that more and bring that back, I'm cool with that. You're not prepared to.
Sure. Yeah, I can hold them through and see, because we do have multiple licenses in our ordinance. Certainly do that.
All right. Anything else we think Scott should research and bring back on this? All right. Seeing none, let's move on to old business. Scott, when you're ready, do you want to present the cannabis zoning?
Yes. Okay, so this has been gone through with a couple other city personnel, and basically the long and short of it is we need to move forward with this fairly quickly because the moratorium will expire December 31st as far as the allowance of cannabis retailers and wholesalers, manufacturers, and everything else. So the first step in any of this, right, is getting the zoning.
That's what county, right? Didn't we put our own in for the city? The
the state said all moratoriums must end December 31st, or, January 1st of 2025. Yep, yeah, that was like that kind of came out of left field. I didn't know we really knew about that until a couple months ago, so that's why it's like this big push now. So like anything else, we better do something before the state tells us we have to do something, right? So the one thing, the overall, let me see, I think I put the key takeaways in here. I'll just start with those. Let's see.
Page 28.
Yep, page 28. So like I showed a few of you before we started our meeting, this is not an easy topic to research. This folder right here is all cannabis related. Yeah. So some of the high points. So each local government must allow at least one cannabis retailer per 12,500 population. At the time, it was unknown whether or not this would tie into St. Louis County as well. That was going to get checked into. Like, let's say with St. Louis County's population of 200,000 people, they have to have 20 cannabis retailers, right? Let's just say that's the number. Well, Duluth has 10, and then Hibbing has 5, Virginia has 5, and then just Ely not have one. The definition of local government I found in some material does further define local government as city, county, township, things like that. So my understanding currently is that we won't fall under that, and then we still will be required to allow at least one, because we're under 12,500. But again, that's still like completely yet to be determined. One thing we do know is the zoning, we can't outright ban cannabis retailers, right? So we can put restrictions like conditional use permits, interim use permits, things like that, but we can't outright say you cannot have them at all in the city of Ely. For some of the low potency stuff, we're going to follow state statute. All cannabis-related businesses other than retail will be allowed in industrial zoning, except retail, which will fall under C1 and C2 zoning. Again, I have this all as CUP only. A low likelihood of other businesses outside of retail due to space and area in the city. So we don't have farmland in the city. So like outdoor cultivation, things like that. And then our business park space is limited, and then just our zoning and schools, things like that. There's stipulations, which we'll get into nuts and bolts when we go through the ordinance, the proposed ordinance. Do you have a question?
I will.
Okay. Then, let's see. And then we need to go look through each category for the zoning distances. So that's where we're just going to come back. So those are kind of the key takeaways of what we need to do with this ordinance.
So is your understanding that like liquor stores that sell like THC drinks and like gas stations selling gummies won't be able to do that because we'll only be able to have one retailer?
So anything that's currently licensed would still be allowed. It gets into there's different levels. It's more of the raw marijuana.
Got it.
The raw.
So it's like
the more raw THC, like the flower and things.
Got it.
The dispensary type places, right? So, and that's where we go into this. The further definition of that type of stuff will be defined in our actual ordinance, which we have right now that allows retail. That's in a different chapter. So this will just merely pertain to the zoning of that. So and that's what it talked about when I talked about the 88 pages of repealed statutes. It talks about like they had different levels listed in them, and then they crossed it out and put it in. Right? Because of the legality of things being able to change and higher potency of stuff, there's different definitions and things like that. So what I was told is our focus needs to be where are they allowed, and then we will work on the other end of the actual ordinance, the licensing ordinance afterwards.
Yeah.
So would that be allowed like in bars and that,
As far as
selling it? You know, like 'cause the bars used to sell cigarettes and they had to have a separate license for selling the cigarettes.
Yeah, so you have like, currently right now they have an on-sale and off-sale license process. So that won't change, but like to be at a, you know, the retailer, it's a lot of the stuff out there right now is this like low potency hemp product. And it isn't regulated as much as the actual cannabis and the THC type stuff. So yeah, they have to be, and I don't know the question as far as like, you no different than a bar wanting to do off-sale liquor, right? So they have to obtain a separate license, same thing.
Yeah.
So if they want to do on-sale and off-sale, and then I think there's actually in the cannabis licensing, there's actually the consumption and the purchasing have to be separate. So you can't, so like right now you can go to a bar and buy CBD drink or THC drink or whatever the legal ones are to purchase at bar, you can drink that bar, right?
Yeah.
But you can't buy it off sale.
Unless they have a hot sale license.
Right, which I know they have to have a separate space. And then obviously because of the Indoor Clean Air Act, they can't use it, so you can't have like a smoke house.
Because like, Whitney used to have their off sale right there in the bar.
Sure, yeah, but the cannabis is different than alcohol, so the nuts and the bolts of the actual licensure, I don't have all of that information. I just have it as it's related to the zoning aspects.
Tim?
Can the ordinance prohibit private clubs?
What do you mean by private as well?
Well, smoking in public is the issue that if somebody has a private club, and they allow smoking in the private club.
Not unless you're on a reservation. Because as long as I understand, right, in order than like tobacco smoking, you can't have those indoor smoking. And then if you were to have an outdoor space, which you can outside, right, you can't, so like you could set up on a public sidewalk and have tables, let's say a bar or a restaurant, set some tables on the sidewalk. And then outside, so you can't do that. But if you've got like barrels or somebody that's got a private patio, there's nothing inhibiting people from smoking cigarettes or marijuana in that situation.
So I see there's like two ways we can go about this, right? We can like allow it in like commercial and industrial zone, like you said. We also like are required to have the adult entertainment thing, we put that over by the softball fields. So there's also that option too, right? Making its own designation.
There is, but then that creates, the problem with that is that creates a more complicated process. So adapting it this way
It's better.
is better because we can just put this in the ordinance, and Kelly will do a much better job of actually drafting the ordinance than I do, but this is just the model of what needs to be in there. But again, that's where the CEP falls into play. These are all the different definitions, things like that. If people have questions on that, it's not huge. Again, huge with the zoning, just give some definitions. So here's like, I would say the biggest thing that we would kind of be concerned with. 24. So that actually will then designate where certain things can happen, right? So the distances I put on here is the maximum that the city per statute can enlist, right? So we can be less restrictive than state statute, but we can't be more restrictive. And to be honest, I kind of put this up here as, I was told just to leave it as the maximum. If council wants to adjust that, they can. But I feel like we're getting kind of a different, it's a different category in my opinion, the raw marijuana versus the trace and stuff like that. So for the operation of a cannabis business, has to be, can't be within 1,000 feet of the school. Cannabis business within 500 feet of a daycare, 500 feet of a residential treatment facility, 500 feet of an attraction such as a operation of cannabis retail business within 500 feet of another cannabis retail business. Prohibit active cannabis business or business seeking registration for continuing operation at the same site as a school or daycare, residential treatment facility. Attraction from public park that is regulated by minors. Yep.
What about a hospital or senior living or assisted living?
It doesn't, these are all the state statutes, stipulations that we've imposed, nothing in there about hospitals and things like that. Could one argue that a hospital could be considered a residential treatment facility? And the other gray area with this is there isn't much for guidance. And cities are kind of stuck with trying to kind of do what they feel is best. And I think, to be honest, it's going to be a trial and error. Unless somebody like, if somebody wants to come put a business in, the city says no, they can challenge.
It's no maximum,
Huh?
no maximum,
No maximum.
maximum number of businesses.
No, we just have to have one.
So the city couldn't have 41, which is.
Right. Yeah. No, the city can stop at one. Yeah, we're just going to allow the one that we're mandated to allow, and that's it. Which again, really the area that we're in. So then here's where we actually get into the zoning for each, right? So cultivation, like I said, conditional use permit only, industrial zoning.
Did we at one time hear that might be interested in doing it with the building?
Yes. So again, there has to be a separation of the grow space from the retail space, which it can be in the same building, but it has to be, it can't be in the same area. The last talk that I had with the individual was they were going to scrap it because the process was too difficult, the social equity thing and all that. And the investors didn't want to deal with it. Heard back and forth. We were told that we want to work with storage units. And then there's talk of there might be, grow potential outside of town, but then use that as more of just a social place or whatever. I haven't seen anything recently. I think I said the last that I had heard was the idea was going to be scratched. Because the state does have a lot of processes to go through to achieve this. So again, we don't have, thing with the cultivation, we don't have agriculture. So we're very limited, we just talked about space, right? And viable space, green space. How much of it's even viable for cultivation, other than the greenhouse, so again, the industrial zoning is the best fit for the current zoning we have. Again, when we look at manufacturing, industrial zoning, again, these are all by conditional use permit. Because again, we can't outright deny it, but what we can outright do is set conditions, right? You have to abide by those conditions. So it does give us a little more control of what we can do with them. At manufacturer, again, we'll see animals, things like that, industrial zoning, conditional use. Wholesale, again, conditional use by industrial zoning. We have cannabis retail, C1 and C2 zone. The big thing that we don't want to have happen is we don't currently have any, but we don't want to have any of our retailers going to residential.
What was that?
We currently don't have it happening, but what we don't want is our retail spaces to go to residential homes. So that's why I'm getting it in C1, C2. And again, that's conditional use permit only as well. And some of these might not even really apply to here, we might not be able to jurisdiction, but again, it's, if we don't put it in there, somebody can come in and say, well, you don't have it, whatever. So we're better off to at least have it in there and not need it. The transportation businesses, again, cannabis delivery, again, is that like DoorDash? Like their business hub, again, we would have that, their hub be on the industrial zone of this. And these are pretty similar, I think, to what we have right now in our ordinance, but this is like the example of hours of operation. Between the hours of 10 a.m. and 9 p.m., 7 days a week, state statute prohibits the sale between 2 a.m. and 8 a.m., Monday through Saturday, 2 a.m. Again, guidance from the state. I think with advertising signs, they are a little more restricted on, it's not just like general signs. And obviously, what they can direct in compliance with our chapter 14 sign ordinance. And with the statutes ever changing, we felt that it was better just to put the statute of 342 in there. Because statute 342 isn't changing so much versus saying this, and this. If the statute changes, the ordinance doesn't have to change, it just reflects what the statute is.
So for all of these different zoning things in here, are we gonna add them specifically in the ordinance, or would we just add them to our municipal and conditional use list?
No, there would be an addition to this ordinance, so it would be like this additional section 11.5.
Okay, so we would still need to have all of this written in there instead of just on our conditional permissible use.
We felt that was easier than adding it to the permissible uses, because it's almost kind of like a sub. Because in order to go back and read this, then we have to, like I said, we just don't, I would say, we don't have time, to be honest, to go
Okay.
back and read this. So it doesn't matter if it's on here or if it's an ordinance, specifically relates to the zoning of cannabis related stuff. So we have it in our zoning ordinance.
I do think at some point we should work towards putting these on, or at least like, we could on the bottom of the permissible use list, like, bringing that to city council and being like, refer to this section for these ones.
Sure. And that's something, Kelly can maybe somehow just incorporate
Because
it.
people don't have to really find places to look at what's allowed and not allowed.
Right.
Anyway,
Yeah.
thanks.
For the future, yeah.
Basically referencing, back on subdivision 125, the city shall, prohibit operations of cannabis retail business within 500 feet of another cannabis retail business. Is there some restrictions on that in Ely for bars, not, liquor stores? I mean, can you have a bar sitting next to each other or a liquor store next to each other in Ely?
In theory.
Okay, so we're running a double standard then?
This is one of those statutes, right?
I'm sorry?
The state came up with these, not us.
Yeah, but, yeah.
This is just
These
the,
are optional, well, what I'm reading is kind of optional on how the different areas put these regulations in place. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, it's possible. Yeah, the jurisdiction can adopt, not required to adopt. So I'm saying you've got basically one set of rules for alcohol and one set of rules for cannabis. Is there, and I'm only asking, is there a rule in Ely zoning that says you cannot have a bar within 500 feet of another bar or a liquor agency within 500 feet of another liquor agency? Because then it seems almost like it's prejudicial right from the get-go.
So are you thinking that you want to scrap?
I'm sorry?
So are you thinking that you would like to scrap that it's saying that you can't have them that close to each other?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is, we've been talking about this, and I've only been in here for a couple months, so I'm not sure how far along it's been going on. Scott was asked to build something that we can discuss or approve, vote on, say this is what we want to do. I guess what I'm saying is I'd like maybe another, next meeting, we can make a choice on if this is the way we want to stand, or is this something we need to cash out, or I want to read it a little more closely than just up here on the screen. Because this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time you presented this to this group here in this form. Personally, I would like another chance, I'd like a little more time to look at this before I'm making any decisions on it. And that's just a quick perusal, that whole alcohol, cannabis, seems like a whole can of beer keeping alcohol close to your chest.
Yeah. Scott, what's your timeline on needing this done?
I'm sorry?
I just asked Scott what his timeline is on needing approvals.
I know we've got to be done by the end of
The year.
the year.
Yeah, so in theory, the sooner it goes to council, the better, for the fact that, which the soonest we go is October. They have their initial look at it, and then it has to go for the public hearing, because it's an ordinance change. And they have the first reading, and the second reading, so you're looking at end of November.
So if we table this and look at it next meeting, that puts us at the end of December?
Probably.
Is that okay?
Will this go as a recommendation from PZ to council for them to decide anyway?
Yes. So there is the option.
We can make notes of it. We can mention it as an issue and other people agree.
I'm sorry.
I was asking if the ultimate, what's going to happen is we're going to make a recommendation to city council on this. We can note concerns about things like that, because they're going to ultimately make the decision anyway. So we wouldn't slow down the process too much. There's a concern about getting this done by December 31st. That's a very good point. I see what you're saying.
And again, I put the maximum for everything, just as the starting point.
Well, it doesn't matter if that's maximum or minimum. Is there something comparative to controlling locations of alcohol distribution? whether it's
Yeah, I
in-house sale or
Yeah, I don't handle the liquor licensing, so I can't say that there is for sure, there isn't for sure.
So Scott, could you add that as a note that we've talked about this, and that just to bring that up when you're presenting that that's something, would you be okay with that method?
But saying much, just wait and look and see what the council says about it.
No, so I'm saying that when Scott presents or gives this to city council to look at, that there's a note on there saying that we talked about this, and we understand there's a double standard, and we want them to take that into account as well.
Okay, here's what I'm saying is I just looked through this quickly. I haven't seen it and I haven't studied it. I'm not somebody that can read it and say, oh, this is great. I've got to let it percolate a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, if we're going to send this to council saying this is our recommendation with these thoughts on it, I don't have my thoughts together to put everything together tonight.
Yeah.
And in this short time frame, I don't think I should be expected, or any of you.
Yeah, I will say, I mean, we did.
And I understand the need to get, because it's state deadline,
Yeah,
but in something like this, it can affect a lot of different decisions down the road. If we need to have more time to input and we've got to meet this deadline, I'm willing to come back on another meeting just for this.
Because like the bars, there used to be the Vets and the Rabbit and then the Ford.
Yeah, and you got something like the old Deer's Bar,
There's
and
no-
then across the street.
there's no
The
limitation.
paddle, there was a bar that's not there anymore, I don't believe, but somebody could open it up again. And then you got down the street, you got the steakhouse that is closed, but somebody could open it up again, start, serving in the alcohol again.
Well, there's a limit on how many bar licenses there are.
Okay, well, you're basically in this thing limiting it.
Yeah.
You're not limiting one, I suppose you could say you have 10 in here, people want it to saturate the market. And nobody may get any money, but I'm saying that we don't have the time right now to say, okay, let's pass it on. I don't have the
Yeah.
time to pass it on, this is our.
we can maybe come back, we can discuss here in a second if we want to come back, but I will say we did get the packet ahead of time, so the hope was to have some research done ahead of time.
I'm sorry.
We did get the packet ahead of this meeting, so the hope was we did research ahead of this meeting, but in lieu of that information, we can come back and have another meeting about this.
I don't want to force everybody in the meeting unless they can see my idea. I mean, if nobody's going back in this, I'll just step aside. I tried. I mean, that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I will, personally, like I said, even if it's in 2 weeks or in 48 hours, look at it. We can meet on Friday. I don't care,
Yeah.
whatever.
Does everyone, is everyone, I guess Scott, can you pull up the city calendar, see if we could have another meeting? Because then we also have to put it out to the public that we're doing it.
What is the consensus of?
I don't know, anyone have any feelings?
I don't necessarily want to put it in a motion. I would like to come to consensus on it. If, like I said, if you folks don't want to go ahead, you want to pass this along as it is, and with my comment on it.
My personal feeling is that it's okay to bring forward and the city council can provide recommendations, and I don't think we have to be perfect in knowing all the stuff, and that if we provide enough saying we saw that, I think that would be good, and then we can also be public citizens at the city council meeting and provide further input if we want as well. That's my personal feeling, but I'm willing to hear other people's thoughts. Anyone else? Tim?
Our experience with the short-term rental issue was similar to this. At the time, if we were participating in that or not, I can't remember, but we spent months going through the short-term rental thing and developing pages of recommendations, came to council, and they went through them and picked the ones they liked, and identified the ones they didn't care for, and discussed them with us. I would imagine this would be somewhat the same with the process. We'd like to have a recommendation. Ultimately, they're going to make the decision what they go with. But if you do have a concern about something like such as you mentioned, the 500 feet apart is kind of unrealistic, I think you're going to find support to the council for those kinds of ideas, and we will come to a discussion about that. So our recommendation really should be, I think, that we understand where we're going with this, and we have some concerns. Here are a couple of recommendations. Get the council, because they're the ones that are really going to spend all the time on doing this stuff.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. I agree with you with that part of the, I don't know, the council will think about it. Some might think they should have one in every corner, and some might think only one in town.
Okay, so are we okay adding a note to it and letting council percolate more?
Yeah, I'm not going to put it in proposals. We can
Okay,
more of a discussion.
perfect. I think it's a really good topic to bring up, and thank you for bringing
I'm
it up.
sorry.
That was a really good topic to bring up, so thank you. All right, Scott, any more to present on this? To go all the way through? Yeah.
And so you're saying that on the board, being on the PZ board, that I can come up in a council meeting as a,
That was so
yeah.
Yeah.
In my 3 minutes, get as much out of it as I can.
They might actually invite us again to the study session. We did it for the short-term rentals, we had a study session with council, joint session on off, second Tuesday of the month, and went through it all and talked about recommendations. We did the same thing with our conditional and permitted uses pages too. We just said, come in here and tell us what your thoughts were, what do you guys
Can
think?
we ask to be invited and included in that?
Yeah,
Or
let's,
is
well,
that
we can
something-
definitely ask to be invited to a study session.
And then let us know when we're gonna have this study
Yeah.
session on, and then, do you know when that might be, Scott, or is it dependent on when we get this?
They still do it every other Tuesday, don't they?
Usually again, end of the month. The last Tuesday of the month is usually what it is. So one is, I think, in October.
Because I would
The
leave.
24th of September is the study session, next Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm out of town until Wednesday, and gotta run down Michigan.
I can consult with powers that be and see if they would do special studies.
Because I can't, so I'm not expecting that.
But I'm also, like, if you have like thoughts too, I can present your thoughts if you have them in a written format too.
Okay, give me,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we love that.
Sunday, so
Point of information, September 24th, Paul Cass and Jerome DeBelts will be at a candidate forum for city council. So, you know, if you do that with the timing, check the timing on that. I don't
Yeah,
know
I'm
if it
sure that
starts at 7.
city council sets their own study sessions, so they'll look into
Right.
if the council themselves are able to go.
Think of your own time on the meeting, if you meet earlier or whatever. Plus, there's other meetings scheduled, I think, for that day too, city council.
Yep, thank you. All right, Scott, you want to keep presenting, or we're going to go moving on to the rest of this? I think we're on page 26.
We're at the application, is that where we're at?
Do you have temporary cannabis?
Oh, yeah, we're temporary, sorry. Any individual or business seeking to obtain a cannabis event license must provide OCM, which is Office of Cannabis Management, information about the time, location, layout, number of businesses. Cannabis event organizer must receive local approval, including obtaining the necessary permits or licenses issued by local government, units of government before holding a cannabis event. Requirements, organizer license entitles the license holder to organize a temporary cannabis event lasting no more than 4 days. An interim use permit is required to be issued and approved by the Board of Adjustment prior to holding a temporary cannabis event. Which rolls in our next topic of interim use permits and whether or not they're useful or not. But this would be like a very good example of an interim use permit. Let's see. Fee established shall be charged after this temporary campus events. City shall require application of interim use permit for temporary campus events. Register everything. Interim use permit application shall include all of the name, address, all that happy stuff. The copy of the campus event license application. Again, we've got the statute in there. Submitted to the planning and zoning administrator or other designee for review. Designee determines the submittal application is complete with returns, just like any other application process. Once the application is considered complete, shall inform applicant of such process fees, approval, denial, etc. So again, very similar to all our CUPs that operate right now. Standards, so let me just take a look at the standards. So this is just the state's allowing us to establish standards for temporary cannabis events, including prohibiting on-site consumption, there's public health, safety, welfare concerns. Let's see. So like going back, we talked about not parks, obviously, so you're not using the Lakeside Park, but it could be grading lot. Somebody wants to host a whatever product, something like that. So we get grading lodge a temporary license. They don't have a permanent license, so you get a temporary license. You can only be held on private property, and only in allowable zoning districts that conform to all restrictions. At 95, 22 groups. Questions on that?
be curious, I'm not asking Scott's time, just to go through that in map of Ely, park, daycare, everything else. Draw the 1,000-foot circles, 500-foot circles. There's nothing anywhere in town we can do with this.
So you think we should just scrap the
this-
500 foot?
Well, I just think this is a tip for us to make any recommendation and to send the council with it. What do you keep thinking? I don't know. Yeah, I can see where it makes sense in St. Paul or something. Seems.
So if everything that everyone said so far, the problems with the 500-foot rule,
Well, the zoning part in my mind is C1, C2, and industrial. That makes sense. That's the zoning. The rest of this is like, I don't know if it's really zoning or not. Permitted and conditional uses, okay, you can have it in a commercial district, okay? But we don't say anything about other commercial businesses in the district, how they're so far from this.
Yeah, but I will say this was the model zoning ordinance from the state. And like all this stuff, this was on chapter. And, yeah, whether agree or disagree, I do think, for whatever reason, there is like a different standard right now with this. I don't know if it's just because it's new or what. And again, there's very little to none guidance on it. And, you know, if you send it to council with zero feet, they're gonna be like, well, it's not this. And so,
well, I wonder if we could, like send it, right, like as is, but like cross out where planning and zoning, like, right, this is what the state recommended, and planning and zoning is saying we should change this to less feet than 500 or something like that, or 0.
or planning and zoning recommends the zoning districts and conditional use permits and interim use permits, but has no recommendation for the distances.
Yeah, we could say that too, and we could just say this is what was the state presented, and
This is the state maximum that may be imposed.
does everyone feel good about that? So like where we would say that we agree that the only places that things can happen are in C1, C2, and industrial, but we don't provide any further recommendation on the rest of the ordinance. But
Well, we're gonna still send them this document.
we can still send the document saying that's what the state said.
I'm gonna just quickly go on and
Yeah.
mention the words. You've got the low roads and stuff.
The hemp, like the hemp stuff, the CBD.
Well, something about the events, a private event, and you're trying to have the city put a private event on private property and say it can only be from 5 to 8 o'clock, or 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock on a Saturday? I mean, come on, you got people that don't go up here till on 8 o'clock on Saturday, they're driving in for the city or something.
That I believe is actually on
Monday through Saturday.
the statute guidelines, because it's a temporary. So
I understand it's a statute guidelines, but we're passing it, again, that's another thing I think that should be brought to their attention. You find it on a Saturday, you can't have a private party at an event. I mean, if you followed everything else there, but then you can't go past 5 o'clock. Most people don't even leave the house until 7 o'clock on a Friday, that this might affect.
Well, it's like the blueberry and the harvest moon, they're limited in their hours.
Yeah, but that's on public property. This is on private property. It's got to be held on private property. And they're trying to impose restrictions on private property that I'm not sure if zoning has anything to do with it.
And so that's the thing, is we can bring this forward, and we can even bring it forward and say, the only thing we truly recommend are C1, C2, and industrial zoning for what it says in here. We read the rest of it, this is up to you guys, here's some notes that we decided, or that we talked about, but our recommendation really is for
As long as you
C1, C2, and
As long as you take my notes and pass them on, 'cause I won't.
Well, when we do the recommendation itself, we put those in there. I think when we like draft what the recommendation words that we vote on here to bring them forward, we can put that in there. Yeah.
Because I was thinking, that we do have a noise ordinance, and we have a festival. Is that going to cause a problem going past?
Which is 10 o'clock, I'm assuming.
I think it's.
You got to get a certain license after, yeah, 10. It depends on what's got to be, venture holding.
I hear all kinds of stuff going on.
It's 9 or 10. I don't know what it is.
But it's definitely 5 o'clock seems pretty
Yeah,
early to me.
but what I'm saying is it could be contingent with noise ordinance.
And so I think the stipulation is from the state, because they have the regulations on the license, because they issued a temporary license, the state does. Planning and zoning gets involved because it's an IUP, and those are the hours that are allowed on that license. So that's beyond our control,
Okay.
was the way I interpreted it.
And I'm not beating up on you, Scott.
No.
I know you're trying to blend it all together. And I can also see in a lot of cases sometimes there's an overreach in government.
Well, you don't have any direction from the state. You really.
Yeah, here, make this up. This is what we're going to give you to work with on now.
Yeah. Anyone have any other thoughts? All right, so this is how I see the recommendation that we might bring forth if you choose to bring it. So we bring forth that planning and zoning agrees with the land use and zoning of sub 2 of this proposal brought forth. The rest of this, and we acknowledge that the rest of this is brought forth by the state. Planning and zoning read through it and provided a few comments. One being that there is a double standard with how far the different cannabis shops have to be from each other compared to what the rules are for bars. And that under the temporary cannabis events, the hours from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. might be unrealistic.
So far.
And that we would like to be invited to a study session.
And you will cover me when I'm not here. If it comes on next week.
Yes. So if anyone likes that motion, feel free to make that motion. Or that recommendation.
I make a motion for Rick, so.
Great. Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Recommendation passes. Scott, you got all that?
Yeah, hold on. I think I got it.
Really simple, if the city did, would just do a muni cannabis store.
Which again, that's a whole other chapter. Don't get into that.
No.
Don't get into that. Okay, so what I have,
All right.
what I have is P and Z agrees with the land use and zoning of sub.
Sub 2.
Two of the proposal, the rest is brought forth by the state.
Yeah. Or of state's recommendation.
The rest
recommendations.
P and Z read through it and comments and doubles.
Yeah, comments that there's a double
And
standard.
comments that
There might be a double standard.
a double standard with shops between each other compared to rules of bars. And under events, the hours of 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. may be unrealistic.
And we would like to invite you to study session.
Control of behavior and times on private property is unrealistic.
I'm sorry.
And then the control of the times and behaviors on private property for private events, you said might be.
Yeah, that was.
And that goes to the whole IUP though, because then we talk about IUPs.
All right, so everyone feel good with what Scott just wrote
Yeah.
based on your motion that everyone just approved? Making sure that we approve the right thing. Want to read it one more time?
Recommendation for P and Z, they agree with the land use and zoning of sub 2 of this proposal. The rest is brought forth. Should we say recommendations or requirements by the state?
Recommendations by the state.
Yeah, other recommendations were made by the state, and we had no
How
comment.
about guidelines?
That
Guideline, they're not recommendations. they're guidelines.
guidelines, yeah. Guidelines that were made by the state.
As presented in this.
P and Z read through it and comments that there is a double standard with shops between each other compared to rules of bars and under events. The hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. may be unrealistic. P and Z would like to be invited to a study session.
All right, I think we should vote on this again. Because it changed a little bit. All right, so, all those in favor of that specifically, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, that's the official vote.
Okay. Very good.
All right,
It's clear as mud.
Scott, when you are ready,
Well, it is. Think about it.
would you like to present the interim uses? I
Yeah,
also
so I don't, did everybody have a chance to take a look at my little like cheat sheet that I attached in here? Just says interim uses by jurisdiction. And the very, see the back page, the summary, so like what you're probably all interested in, four main points. Cities and counties use interim uses differently. Overall, most used for land uses to establish time limits for building projects or specific zoning uses that aren't addressed in zoning designation. Some used for events, such as flea markets, etc. Most don't have these listed under the IUPs. Some also use them for home occupations, and also, I didn't put on that list, some use them for like short-term rentals and things like that. Lake County uses them for that type of purpose, so they have every year or a couple of years they have to come in and make sure that the short-term rental isn't causing an issue with neighbors and things like that. So, I'm going back into the circle of the question of ours are only for events and festivals, but we've been subjective and we don't require every event and festival to do it. So, either A, we actually start requiring like Arts, Harvest Moon, and any of these other festivals to do an IUT, or we just simplify and have more or less an application process for these events.
Do you have a proposed application process? Or would that be like next step?
That would be like next step. We don't even like, we don't have IUPs listed under anything else.
Okay. Does anyone have any thoughts, opinions on this? I personally am in favor of simplifying, but I would like to see the application before.
Sure.
So I would say maybe, if I'm just giving my opinion, I would say maybe we're not done with this on our like old business.
Sure.
Now we're giving you the go-ahead to research a little bit more to like what an application might look like.
So research specifically events applications.
In lieu of that. Does everyone feel okay with that? I don't know if we can necessarily vote, but I'm seeing a lot of heads shaking yes. All right,
Maybe specific events or annual events?
sure, yeah, it's true, like, do we want like the farmer's market to have to do it, or do we want it to be just like the big ones? That could be stuff you research too, is like look into like what types of events that would apply, like, does the farmer's market count?
Do we have to hold a hearing for each one?
Also that.
Not if it's a license, it's like an event license.
IUP, you have to merit.
If it's IUP,
Right.
so like that, and that's the problem, is we do it for the burnout competition, and we do it for the marathon. We don't do it for harvest, blueberry,
They really need a park, though.
or whatever, they're all,
So they don't need a permit to rent the park?
yeah,
rent the park as a permit.
Yes.
So you wouldn't also need an IUP for that.
Or this festival license. Is that what you're saying?
As it currently sits, we have some that require IUPs and some like maritime utilizes required. And other areas.
As if every week there's a farmer's market, you have to have a green.
You would just do like a blended IUP. The farmer's market is approved for every Tuesday from this date to this date.
Of like
for the next
application.
5 years. I'm just saying that would be what the IUP would be, because like I said, that one city requires an IUP for flea markets and things like that. So they do probably like we did in Burnout, where it was or even the American 25-year, you know, the fall and whatever these days. I feel like we're either, right now we're doing it for some, but not all. And so it's either we do the IUP for them all, or we just come up with a more simplified event process, because with the burnout competition, they're still doing the road closure notification, you know, we have that process. So the same with Marathon, we're still doing we still have to have a plan, and have to have road notifications, you know, closures and things like that, but it's not.
It's like back when they had the sled dog races, that one year they went down Sheridan Street, and then they used across different roads, and then
Which those all go through council anyways, so like the application would probably go through council, and then you'd see public input at that. You know,
I would say in your application, you might want to include a definition of what an event is.
event or festival.
Sure. A definition of whatever we're
Yep.
calling it.
Yeah.
That's my recommendation.
would that be like a street dance would be that event?
Yeah.
You-
I think we see what Scott comes up with and then we tweak it from there.
Sure.
But I would like to see a definition on there.
Sure.
Any
And then I
other
can-
things that people would like to see in an application? Or let Scott run with it.
Yeah.
All right.
And the other thing I really want to get to, so we went through this last time, we had a couple changes with the dumpster enclosure. Let's see here. So I just struck out the, okay, so one question was the 40-hour thing. Is law for any person to store refuse on a commercial establishment premises? It says, added the word except, such storage shall be in containers as for residential dwellings premises, except that this so-called dumpster. So I literally just took out for more than 48 hours, because I think that was the big kind of hang-up. I don't really know why that was in there. I think that was the only thing that I changed.
Anyone have any thoughts, opinions to bring forth on this ordinance? And the updates Scott's made to it? Scott, could you clarify what you're hoping that we, are you hoping that we make a recommendation to members of council?
Yes.
Let me know if you guys have any questions. If not, if anyone is interested in making a recommendation.
This was only for future development,
Correct, it would not apply to.
whatever triggered the time where existing business would have to do this. You know, another permit for something that say, now you have to come to code or come to. Signify that
I'm
they're
just
continuing.
trying to say if it says it anywhere in here. I would say, like, the biggest thing would be is if, you know, we talk about the balancing between properties, so if the property is residential and goes to commercial, and obviously, you know, it's a change in business and designation, so now it's a commercial. If it's a single family dwelling that's turned into a multi-unit dwelling, then they would have to, is then changing the designation.
So the existing business though, that continued on, there's nothing to trigger them having to come up with this. That's right, if they're already in existence.
No, and I think that's kind of hard to do, you know, if we look at our, to me, it's kind of like, change hands, now you gotta meet the setback requirements, you know, type thing, you know,
Septic requirements they do.
septic changes and stuff, yeah, but so that's like all in the legal and stuff.
We just say changes. How we do that, right? Just so that this won't have much impact on the city.
So I know John's recommendation was to, just if there's anything new, he didn't think he was good that we could go after the existing businesses.
What about like remodel businesses?
What?
For like remodel businesses?
I would say like it's, let's say like a closed, like it's not a, let's say it's not an active business, you know, so if somebody goes in there and they want to open a business, then they have to. Somebody like,
Surgeons reopens or something.
yeah,
So if Sergi's reopened, would they have to comply then? Okay.
because right now it's not, I mean, it's one thing, I guess, if somebody buys, it's actively still being ran, you know, not any changes, but the buildings,
It goes with like typical grandfathering rules, like,
yeah, basically, it's continued use, like grandfather use.
I think that's like what, every like 2 years, like it's exempted for 2 years, and grandfathering.
Actually, it's way less than that. For businesses, it's, I just read that too long, it's actually, it's like only 68 or something like that.
Okay, so it's like grandfathered use rules. Anyone else have any comments? No comments? Anyone feel like bringing a recommendation forward? Comments or recommendations? Yeah.
We're zoning, why are we, we're putting in zoning crimes and offenses. And what strikes me as kind of, what really points it out to me is improper use of this city recycling center. What does that have to do with zoning? That's law enforcement or regulation, it's not really zoning.
Yeah, I think what's happening here is that we saw some different, and people brought up to us the dumpster stuff in the past, and so Scott looked into it, and so planning and zoning can make recommendations on ordinances, even though they're not really our jurisdiction. So we can bring forth changes that we see fit, and they still have to be approved by the city council, so everything, like, we don't put
Yeah, it's
anything
not
in
really
place.
zoning statute.
It's not.
Okay, I understand that.
And things come to me that might be polite or something like that, so it kind of in a roundabout way, you know, kind of ties in, even though it's not chapter 11 or chapter 12 or chapter 14, which like specifically falls under the planning and zoning commission. So that's why we're starting to see things that maybe are outside those 3 chapters that are coming to the commission, because they are relating to to planning and zoning in a way of they're creating issues in these zones and things like that.
But we're just making recommendations on ordinances, and like I said, basically has nothing to do with zoning.
Does not. Any?
I make a motion to pass this on to the folks that need to see it.
All right, anyone want to second that motion? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, the next motion I'm looking for is anyone interested in adjourning?
I'm not saying that.
All right, all right, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Nice meeting you. Good work, good work.
Thank you all for all your input, honestly, it
kept us going, it was not easy